I'm a former reporter, anchor, so I'm always looking for the news value. Even being a PR person, part of my job in media relations is saying this is not mediable. This is not news. And so it's the basic tenets of journalism 101. It's talking about, is it timely? Is it relevant? Is it local? Is it unique? Is it impactful? News is not a dog biting a man. News is a man biting a dog. What's that?
Welcome to this episode of The Brand Behavior, where we explore the latest trends and insights in marketing and branding to help your business grow. Today, we're diving into the world of public relations for startups. How can you get media attention without a big budget? We've got three amazing guests who are experts in this field and will share their valuable insights and actionable strategies that you can take and run with. All right, so we have Pam Perry. She's award-winning marketing communications and PR professional, known for helping established experts and experienced entrepreneurs stand out with their buzzworthy stories. Pam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. This is
awesome.
Good. Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm running down the list here. We have Michelle Garrett. She's a seasoned PR consultant and strategist with a strong background in helping startups and small businesses gain media attention through effective public relations strategies. Michelle, how are you?
I'm good. It's Friday today.
End of the week. We're ready to go. And last but not least, we also have Shenikwa Carr. He's a PR strategist known for her work in media relations and public affairs, helping clients navigate the media landscape to secure valuable coverage. Shenikwa, how are you?
I'm doing great. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yes.
So we're going to start this episode by having our experts share their experiences and provide actionable tips that you can apply to your own PR efforts. All right, so let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about crafting compelling narratives. We understand that compelling narratives can make a difference in getting media attention, but crafting a narrative that stands out, of course, requires that creativity and authenticity and a deep understanding of what your brand is. So, Pam, I want to ask you, what are some key elements of a compelling brand narrative, and how can startups develop a story that resonates with both journalists and their audience?
It really starts with their why. What is it? Why do they start their business? What is it that drives them? What is it that is compelling them to be an entrepreneur? And I think once they kind of look inside of themselves and find like that why, it's unique to them. They can tell it. They don't have to rehearse it. It's authentically them. I had a client that basically is very, very successful, and she wanted to get some PR for some awards that she won. And it's cool. I said, yeah, this is great. You want some great awards. I said, but let's go back to your origin story. Where did you start? She says, oh, I don't want to tell that. And basically she started where she was homeless. I'm like, do you realize that is the story, honey? And she was like, I don't want to tell that part of that. And so it took a while for me to really let her know that you're not homeless anymore. You are now a success. People love a great comeback story, a big come up story. So I had to tell her that being authentic is the thing that really the media doesn't care about you winning an award. They want to know where you came from. So eventually we did get her to tell her story. We put it out on the wire and it got picked up. And now she's been in a lot of major magazines telling her story. Part of it was embarrassment about really, just sharing herself, but she finally did. So knowing your why, your origin story, and what will make people connect with you on a personal level. Human interest
it's like
story.
you have to have some type of, be able to be vulnerable in some sense. And I know it's difficult for some people to do that. I love that story. That's great. Michelle, do you have any examples of how startups that, may have worked with, have used their brand narrative to gain media attention?
Well, I think one of the things that I usually start with clients, be they startups or small businesses or what have you, one place I start is, where is their audience spending time? Because who do we want to reach, right? So a lot of times I feel like, they're just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like we want to be everywhere. We want to be all over social media. We want to be in all these publications. a lot of times, with business to business clients, it's the Wall Street Journal or something like that. And I'm like, is that really where your audience is spending time though? Because it's not wrong or bad to want to be in one of those publications. But I really think trade publications or places where your audience is spending time could be an association newsletter or something like as simple as that. And those are much easier, in fact, to get covered in than it would be to be in the Wall Street Journal. And reporters at those larger publications sometimes get story ideas from looking at trades or looking at industry association newsletters or social media or whatever. So I feel like that is sometimes the reframe that we have to do or that we talk about doing.
Yeah, that's totally valid. And when we look at all the different stories that would allow for this reframe and making sure that when we're developing those brand stories, we are being authentic and in some cases having a sense of vulnerability. And that's all connected. That vulnerability, the authenticity, I believe nowadays that's really what resonates with people. And a lot of journalists may want to find stories that are authentic. So Shenikwa, I know you've worked in many organizations and had many clients. What is your opinion about how authenticity is important to a brand narrative and how startups can ensure their stories remain genuine and relatable?
That 1,000% being authentic is the key. The founder story is everything for sure. I'm a former reporter anchor, so I'm always looking for the news value. Even being a PR person, part of my job in media relations is saying, this is not mediable. This is not news. And so it's the basic tenets of journalism 101. It's talking about, is it timely? Is it relevant? Is it local? Is it unique? Is it impactful? News is not a dog biting a man. News is a man biting a dog. What's that? So then you back up and say, what is the actual story here? So whenever you're pitching something, you want to figure out what makes you unique and what actually makes real news.
Absolutely. I like that notion of what it's not about a dog biting a man, but a man biting a dog. When we think about it in that sense, it really drives home what a compelling story is.
Yeah.
It's somewhat
and
controversial.
There's so many different ways to get news out there between social media, traditional media, even thought leadership. So how are you breaking through that clutter? And the reason is your product something that's brand new, that's never been done before? Is your story something where you're the first in your family to accomplish this thing? Is it within one day you went viral? What makes this newsworthy and how do you break through the noise?
But what if there's startups or brands that have a difficult time trying to figure out what their story is? Because I know sometimes we're so used to accomplishing certain things and we may just marginalize what we've accomplished because it's sort of commonplace, right? So how can we get someone out of that rut that's stuck in thinking that they don't have a compelling?
I think one of the things is kind of like what Michelle said of like knowing their audience, knowing where it is that their audience is hanging out. So say they are reading, I don't know, Business Insider, studying that publication or studying whatever outlet or podcast that your quote unquote, your competitors are on, you can kind of see what it is that the way they're covering things. And if you look at it, it's like, do I have the same type of story? Do I have that same type of, can you see yourself there as well? So a lot of times when people come to me and they say, oh, I want to be in the Wall Street Journal, and then it's because they don't know any other mediums that they could name, because there are other ones that their audience are reading, but they haven't taken the time to do the research to really understand that. And so I always tell, the first thing I tell people is like, make a list of the 10 media outlets that you could see yourself as the lowest hanging fruit first, because media begets media. So start with the 10 lowest hanging fruit. It could be something local or regional, but start there, have those organizations tell your story, and then take that, and then you can see yourself in that, and then go and make it bigger and bigger and bigger by going to larger outlets. But having to see themselves by reading their competitors, it's like, oh, I have that same type of story. So really seeing themselves, and I'm a type of publicist where it's like, where can you see yourself? Mm-hmm. And I want them to understand that they can be there too, but they have to study the news. You can't be in the news if you don't know the news or what is newsworthy. So I do make my clients do a little bit of homework so they can see themselves in it instead of saying, oh, well, get me on Tamron Hall or get me on Wall Street Journal or New York Times. It's like, no, look at some other things where your competitors are. And usually it's in their media kit as a little side note. Like look in their media.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you saying is first start off by crafting a compelling story and then go, as Michelle mentioned, go to where your audience is to understand what type of stories that they're consuming, and then figure out who is creating or developing those stories.
Yeah.
And so you also have to build relationships with those individuals that are creating those stories, right? So give me some examples or some insight on what you can do to help build relationships with the media industry, especially if you do not have any existing industry connections.
I'll go with that for sure. Definitely following them on social media. LinkedIn, especially, Jamari Young over at Forbes BLK is fantastic. And for him, being able to like his content, to comment on his content, and then eventually send him a pitch. I'm not a big fan of DMing people. I think you go the right way with email, but still knowing him, seeing that I've seen this person in my comments, I've seen this person like me. Who's this person? It's an easier in.
Yeah, Jabari's going to be mad at you because you dropped his name. I'm telling you, his inbox is going to be flooded.
Well, he's amazing. Use him. So,
and also too, a lot of journalists are on Twitter. I know a lot of people are feeling a certain way about Twitter and that kind of thing about who owns it, but Twitter is where a lot of them are still hanging out. And I tell people, I said, follow the media that you want to be in on Twitter. Sometimes they will even tweet out, I'm looking for someone that can. And they will tweet it out. And if you're following them, put them in a list on Twitter, and you will see if they're asking for a pitch, you can then step in and be that person for them. And a lot of times in the Twitter header, they'll put send pitches to, and they'll put their email, just like Shenikwa says, on Twitter. Because sometimes in LinkedIn, you can't really get their contact information unless you connect. But on Twitter, it's right there at the top, like send pitches to, and they'll say where to send the pitches.
There's also something called Help a Reporter Out, HARO. They're actively looking for pitches all the time, every single day. So HARO is a great free resource.
HARO,
does that still exist?
I know that I thought Peter took a buyout and he kind of left.
Peter sold HARO, but he has Source of Sources now, so that's new. I think
thank you guys for updating me.
Yeah. No, HARO is still there, but I think you have to maybe pay to play with HARO a little bit. Maybe Cision, I think Cision bought it maybe. But anyway.
It's still, that's right.
It's still a way to look for opportunities, Source of Sources and HARO, and there's some other ones I think too. So
absolutely. And so Michelle, when people reach out to their journalist, as an example, what are some tactics that people can use when pitching their stories to their journalists? And what are some common mistakes to avoid?
Well, I mean, one thing that I see people do, and maybe this is more agency-wise than just solo PR consultant-wise, but they just spam out the same pitch to they'll pull a list out of a media database, and they'll just hit send to thousands of reporters. Now that, not only does it not work, which is a reason not to do it, it ticks the reporters off, and then their mailbox is full of irrelevant pitches. So I think it's really important to do some research. I think Pam mentioned that, and I'm 100% in agreement with that. That you really need to figure out where are your people spending time, and what journalists, what publications are going to be interested in your story, and that's really, I think, what you need to focus on. And then you need to figure out what stories are they going to be interested in. Look at stories they write. Do they write stories that have data points? Maybe you could do a little bit of research and send them some research or something like that. Or maybe you have a great spokesperson, thought leader on a specific topic that they're covering that's trendy, something like that. So I just feel like there's a little bit more thought that needs to go into it. It's not just okay, we're going to spam all this out and tomorrow we're going to be covered everywhere. That doesn't really work.
So it seems like there's almost a sales or business development approach, right? Where you ultimately don't want to spray and pray, if you will, just having a templated email, a message, but focusing on making sure that you understand the journalist and their needs, right? And what's most important to them, or what specific industries or sectors that they follow or write content on. And then customize your message to whatever their needs are. It's very much so a business development type of tactic, right? So I think for any startup, you probably understand business development. So let's connect some of those same principles with your PR strategies, and I think you'll hit the ground running, right? Would you guys agree?
Mm-hmm. Good advice.
Definitely. And that subject line is everything. Being able to say what you have to say, it's a headline for you. And also when you get into the pitch, keep it short. If it's too much to read, they're going to just say too much, can't deal with this. But also maybe even saying, I saw your story about, I have a related story that you might like make it personal in that way as well.
Yeah. And also, I think when just thinking about kind of aligning this with business development, anytime you're building relationships with anyone, regardless of what the industry is, you have to work on keeping in contact with that individual and perhaps even commenting on articles that they previously, even without pitching them.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But building that relationship. I mean, do you guys think that's an effective strategy?
A lot of times it is guerrilla marketing one-on-one, trying to get the media to pay attention to us because they get probably, I don't know, 200 to 300 pitches a day, and they can't respond to everybody, and they won't. They are taught to ignore what is not really relevant. And so when you have a relationship with them, even if I have a good friend that's a producer with PBS, I will not send her every single client that I have because I know it doesn't fit, right? So if you don't have a relationship, you have to learn how to develop that relationship and even ask someone who knows someone that can share your information to them just so it can bubble up in their email. And that just happened today. I was trying to get something on Al Jazeera and the person was not responding, and I knew someone who had been on the show, and I say, hey, can you get this to this person and let them know that I sent them an email, several emails. I wanted them to pay attention. And it's just human nature. If you have too much and you're overwhelmed, and the media outlets, they're shrinking. So you have to develop that relationship or find a way, whether it is through LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter, whether it's email, finding someone who knows someone, because you could see that story in that outlet, but they're too busy to respond. That is really what a publicist does. It's like, we're going to find a way to get that good pitch, that good story to that outlet that you see your client on. And so your client is just like, well, can't you get me on there? Why didn't they call you back? Well, listen, but it's going to take more than one email, first of all. So we do have to develop those relationships, and humor is always good, or even going to events where you know they're going to be at. I'm not saying stalk people, but I have told some clients that you're in this town, they're going to be here at this event. Just kind of just be there and introduce yourself. Not as a stalker, but just like if they're going to be at a conference, go up and introduce yourself. And they know that if you pay to be in the room, that you must really be more serious than someone that's just shooting out an email, because you actually paid to be in the room where you knew they were going to be so that you can introduce yourself to them. That makes a big difference.
I'll add this part too. As a former journalist, I think I responded to maybe 2 pitches over 15 years. We are not looking for external stories. I was a local anchor. So it's what's happening, news of the day, what's going on in that direction. When it does come to when I would respond, it was a relationship and there was an actual real story. I know more people in news than I know in PR, but I can't pitch them something that's not a story. They'll tell me, Shenikwa, come on. So making sure it's still going back to, is it mediable?
Oh man, that is, we need to underscore that, highlight it, stick a pin in it, put it on a Post-it, because that's one perspective that I know for sure I didn't think about earlier on, in terms of, if you put ourselves in the shoes of these journalists, they're getting pitched possibly every day, and they're probably not taking a lot of pitches, but the pitches that they are taking is certainly built upon the relationships that you have. So I would say it could be 50-50. 50% of the effort toward your PR strategies could be toward building relationships, and maybe the other 50 could be toward pitching. Do you think that's an even balance, or give me your thoughts?
I don't overspeak. So Michelle, you go ahead and go and I'll jump in next.
Well, I mean, I do think there's something to building the relationships, but I also think if you have a good story and you pick the right reporter, hopefully you're going to get a win out of that. But now again, it's not as easy as that. But honestly, I just feel like a lot of times we're just like, in the dark. We're just throwing darts at a dartboard. We know we're not doing any research or thinking through it, or, and clients must think it's easy because sometimes, they're like, well, why can't you just, call your buddy over and I'm like, no, it doesn't really work that way. Plus, reporters are being laid off in droves and media outlets are totally collapsing.
Yeah.
I mean, the game is changing. And so I feel like we really have to be creative and think about, maybe we need to self-publish some of our news and content. And that's, where you can do that on your site. Then maybe you could pitch a story to a trade pub that you already self-published, something like that. So that's kind of how I'm trying to work with clients and get them to think about how we do things a little bit smarter maybe, and repurpose a little bit more and leverage your customers, for example, if they're willing to talk to a trade publication about how they're using your product or service, something like that. And then again, the thought leadership, when you actually have, leaders that have real thoughts, I think that's a great way also to try to get some publicity for your brand.
I love what you said, because reporters are getting laid off in droves. It's been the worst, literal, just mass layoffs across the board, where entire news departments are being just shuttered. So these journalists are also looking for new ways to monetize themselves. And so they are their own media sometimes. More and more are freelancing. I think thought leadership is everything. I said one reporter, big Essence reporter, who went freelance, had her come and speak at a conference. Because she was a speaker, she saw stories. We got 7 stories out of that, not because we pitched her one conference, but we involved her in the conference. She saw stories, and now she's a thought partner along with us.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, and one of the things too, when we talk about relationships, it can be overwhelming, but I go back to make a list of your 10, the 10 that you see yourself in, and give yourself maybe 30, 60 days to make sure that you are in those 10, whether it is a large podcast, a radio show, magazine, online, Madame Noir, whatever it is. But those 10 are the ones that you focus on to find that person that is writing on things that match your brand and matches the audience, and you're adding value to that outlet. So if you have 10, you're following them on Twitter, seeing them on LinkedIn and that sort of thing. Most people won't do that because they want to it's like squirrel, I'm over here, I'm over there. But if you just follow those 10 will then net to something. And say you do end up in the Grid or another publication, then you can say, okay, then another media outlet will see it. They'll see what that story was, or maybe they'll want to one-up that story from a competitor outlet, whatever it is. But start with those 10. And if the story is really, really good, then you can say, hey, thank you so much. Follow up, develop it. It says, do you know of another outlet that might be interested in this story? Not direct competitor to them, but media people have media friends. Kind of like Shenikwa said. She says she knows more media people than she does PR people. So they do have friends. Maybe it's another city, maybe it's another type of outlet. But do good with the one. And I always say this too, never snub someone just because it's a small outlet, because you never know where that producer will end up later, and you never know where that reporter will end up later. So never snub someone and say, I'm not going to do that.
Oh, yeah. No.
Treat them all the same.
Exactly. It kind of goes back to building that relationship, right? And how it's so important it is to do so. So we talked earlier about different platforms to use. You guys mentioned Twitter or X being a great place to connect with and find journalists. Michelle, what digital tools or platforms would you recommend for startups to use in their PR strategies?
I do think there's research that supports that LinkedIn is becoming more of a place where reporters are asking for sources, looking for sources, and of course being, working a lot in B2B, that is probably the primary outlet that I would, advise clients to be active on if they're not already. I do think a lot of reporters are still on Twitter/X. I have my account there still because, I'm in PR and, otherwise I might not, but But yeah, I have to be where the reporters are. Threads, I am also a user of Threads. I know that's kind of growing a little more slowly, but there are some reporters there too. And then, I know some are on Instagram. I don't do a lot with Instagram, but I know in B2C, that would be a huge place to be hanging out with the reporters, I think.
I would add this as well. If you have the coins, I don't think it's all too expensive, but the investment is there for Muckrack. Muckrack is a platform where you can find any journalist you want. You can follow their stories. You can follow their socials, their trends. You can build your media list. So Muckrack is something I would definitely recommend. There are also some DIY outlets as well, like Prowly, just different subscription-based services where you can get a database of journalists to be able to just more easily find who you're looking for.
Yeah. Because if you do something like a Cision, you will be overwhelmed. And it's thousands and thousands of dollars. So I would say LinkedIn is the best place to really start. And then that always goes back to making sure that your LinkedIn is robust and professional. So if you're going to reach out and connect with someone on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you look correct on LinkedIn.
I think, for startups, they're on a budget. So I would be careful paying too much for tools because I think all of the media databases, most of them are pretty expensive. And just like wire services, it's a little bit of overkill and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And if you don't really need it all the time or as much as you might think, especially if you're just getting started, so.
Yeah. And so we know this episode is about focusing on startups or brands with limited budgets. But give us an idea of if they did have all the money in the world to leverage the various tools, what would those tools be? What would that process look like?
Well, if they had all the money in the world, I mean, we're in the world of pay to play. So if there's anything that they wanted, if they had all the money, they could probably find it and get where they need to go. I'm telling you, it is. When I tell you, Michelle Shenikwa, it is so much has changed. I mean, I have had someone from reputable organization to say, if you have $10,000, we can get you a story in A, B, and C. I'm like, what? I'm like, really? And then I asked someone, how did you get in there? And they said, well, I paid. I'm like, oh, that's not really right. But I'm a journalism major. So ethics and journalism were a thing. But if they had all the money in the world, if you say you want to be in A, B, and C, there's going to be someone out there that can find it for you and pay someone to get it for you. But that's a whole other conversation for another time.
Yeah, that's that is unethical and it's not really what you want. If you're pitching a story, if you have $10,000, that's called integration. So that media outlet is branded content. You can always go that direction for something guaranteed. But when it comes to earned media, you're working for the story, you want to be able to make sure you're working with a journalist who would never take it for pay. But again, if you have all the money in the world, I highly, highly recommend putting together, first of all, making sure that you're ready, your website, your brand, your assets. You don't want to be pitching yourself and you are not baked. Because once you're out there, let's say you get the Today Show segment and you're not ready for it, then what? You're exposed.
Mm-hmm. That has happened before. People aren't ready.
Talking about budget, if you do have money and you can pay for ads, that also, I'm not going to say it always helps, but it does help a little bit to get on the radar of the editorial side, especially with trade publications. And I do try to advise clients that if they have a little bit of money to spend on ads, that can maybe help us get a little bit more attention on the editorial side. And I don't say it in an unethical way, but I just think it's kind of like human nature. Like, of course, if somebody's paying you, you're probably going to notice them more than another brand that doesn't ever pay for an ad or go to a trade show or sponsor your webinar or whatever it is. So I feel like integration, doing all, paid, earned, shared, owned, peso model, if you can, is great. But, again, not everybody has all the budget in the world. So.
That is so
I'll add
true.
this part too. If you have all the money in the world, an influencer campaign. Because honestly, earned media, traditional media is great, but influencers, social word of mouth is everything. So getting yourself a great influencer campaign might be even more viable than earned media.
Speaking of which, I have gotten this week alone probably at least spammed in my email influencer pitches, like say we'll pay you. I don't know whether it is just recently, but they're like these agencies now that are pitching me to be an influencer for them. I just delete them. I'm like, what? They're going through Instagram and they're just sending out these pitches. Hey, we want you to do whatever. And I'm thinking, my
Pam,
God.
you have reached the next level of your career. You're an influencer
Oh
now.
my God. It's like things have changed. I'm like, do you realize I'm a publicist? I'm not trying to be an influencer. Like, really? It is one of those things where if one tool that if you do have a budget for to have a PR Newswire account, that would be a good thing to do if you have that budget, because now you could put out a press release and it's on PR Newswire. Now there is a whole lot of other type of PR distribution services, but they're just like at the top. So they're kind of like the Rolls Royce of it. They were kind of like the first in. So I would say that would be one to do.
Can I say this, Pam, and challenge that just a little bit and not get in trouble because I think you're fantastic? I shy away from PR Newswire these days because as a journalist on the other side, we never looked at it. That was not something that we paid attention to. I think Business Wire is a different story just a bit, but a lot of what we're really looking for is just like that organic, natural coverage. So PR Newswire, back in the day, they would help with SEO, but in terms of like the journalist paying attention to it, not always. I recommend pitching one great reporter. It could be a local reporter at a syndicated outlet. And so that one reporter who is syndicated, that story goes from him, from the local ABC all the way up to the national ABC, maybe even global. So just pitching that right person may go further than, in my opinion, the newswires.
But how do we know if the person is syndicated or not?
Well, there are several syndicated organizations. Back in the day, I worked for a news feed, a national news feed. And so whatever stories I put on the national wire, I would feed down to the local affiliates, where sometimes there'd be a local reporter in Waco, Texas, who had a really great story with national appeal. And we would pick up that local story and feed it out on a national level.
And one of the things I say about using PR Newswire, if you put the story out on PR Newswire, then you can actually use it to pitch the reporter.
Yes.
So I say that. And it just looks a little bit more dignified, I guess you would say, than say one of these other, Johnny come lately PR distribution services. So that's why I said that, because now you're kind of looking like you're in the game. If you are, and Business Wire is good too, but depending on what it is, if it's not business, then it's like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. But PR Newswire, if you could take the link, and it does get picked up, it has good SEO, but take that particular link and then send it, and they'll see that it's from PR Newswire, and they're more likely to open it versus if they've never heard of it, because people don't want to get
absolutely. It's a this and definitely if you're going to do PR Newswire, you want to put it out there and also have it inside of a pitch. It's a great strategy.
Absolutely. And so, Pam, I know you talked about writing a press release and putting it out through tools such as PR Wire, right?
PR Newswire.
PR Newswire, that's right. So, Michelle, if you can jump in, let us know how to create a compelling press release. What are the elements that are needed in a great press release?
Well, first of all, I would say make sure you're thinking through why you're writing the press release before you write the press release, because I think for a lot of us, clients and C-suite executives will come and say, okay, we need a press release about X. And you're like, well, hold up a minute. You might need a press release, but maybe that's not the right vehicle. So that's where I start with that conversation. I think that things that are newsworthy for press releases would be like the appointment of a new executive, a new product launch, an acquisition, something that's actually newsworthy. And really what I'm thinking about when I'm writing the press release is how am I going to pitch this and who am I going to pitch it to that's actually going to write a story about it. Because I think that's really, to me, the point, not necessarily putting it on a newswire or anything like that, although I would advise sharing it on social media and posting it on your website, because I think that makes a nice history. People can go in and look up and see what you've been doing, see there's momentum there, and all of those things. But once you get to the press release itself, I would say make sure it's not too lengthy. You can link to more information. I usually like to keep them about a page and a half, something like that. You need your boilerplate, which is standard with every press release, compelling headline, subhead, grab them in the first paragraph. Those are some just quick tips, I think.
Sure.
Explain, for those that don't know, Michelle, what a boilerplate is.
One time I was telling somebody about it and they thought I meant a boiler maker. And I'm like, you can have that after you write the boilerplate, maybe. But anyway, it's just an about paragraph, but I like it to be the same on every press release. And sometimes I work with clients that have like multiple companies. And so we have to figure out, like, do we do one for this company? Do we do just one that talks about all three companies? So I think it's nice to have consistency there. It just says, like, this company has been in business for X years. They're based here. We have locations around the world in these 9 countries. This is what we are most known for. It's kind of like that, just a kind of about informational paragraph.
That's good. I consider press releases like the love language of journalists, right? Because, people say, well, I have the same information on my website. I said, but you're not going to send a report to your website. Okay. They want it in a press release. So people say, oh, press releases are dead. I said, but that's the most objective way where they're going to hear your story. So we don't want to send them an article that sounds like clickbait. So we want to send them a press release because the press release has the language, what they're used to reading, and it's objective. So sometimes you can send someone some copy from something else and it's not a press, it's subjective. So, yeah.
It's the inverted pyramid. It's the who, what, why, when, why, where, how, and all that. And then just down to the less important. And they do ask for them. That's the thing. When people say they're dead, I'm like, well, reporters asked for them. And I just posted about that on LinkedIn not too long ago. I'm like, hey, they just asked me today for a press release. So I don't know if you folks think they're dead. I don't know.
No,
if they buy on your story, if a journalist is in agreement with the story, then they want to have the information. But what I hear back from media and also kind of when I did the work, keep it short and sweet. Any press release over 2 pages is way too much, or in your email at this point, it's way too long. And all the different clicks, the links, everything taking you different places, they don't want all that. So maybe 1 or 2 redirects, but otherwise keep it short, sweet, simple. It's the news.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. So probably no more than a page will probably be that sweet spot, you think?
Yep. Okay. Maybe 2 to 3 quotes.
500 words, 750 max.
Yep.
If you can do that, that would be excellent.
500, 750. Awesome. So we talked about from the very beginning, creating a compelling narrative to making sure that narrative is authentic and in some cases vulnerable, because that could lead to better news coverage. And then building the relationships right after you created that narrative with these journalists and media people. And then from there, utilizing digital platforms such as, Twitter, LinkedIn. We also mentioned a couple other enterprise level tools that are possible if money wasn't an issue. And then what I want to talk about is after we've done all of that and the story is picked up, how do we actually measure the success of our PR efforts? We obviously need to make sure as startup brands to track everything, all the key metrics so that we can optimize their PR strategies moving forward to get the desired results. But what are some key metrics that startups should track to measure their success of their PR efforts?
So I'm gonna start. Yeah, I'm gonna start with, because I deal with personal brands of people, right? So the speakers and the authors, they're looking at, are my books selling? Are people asking me to speak? Those are like the main 2. And sometimes they'll look at, I've had people, request me to follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, that kind of thing. So they kind of look at their social media, they're growing their email list. So those are some of the things. But for people, whether they're in Speakers Magazine or something like that, are people going to their website requesting them to speak because they've seen them a story, they've seen them. And I always tell them it's kind of like a model of AIDA, as I learned that in college. Attention, interest, desire, and action. So we're getting their attention. Okay, so that's good. Now they're interested. That's like the second step. The desire, now they want it, and now they're taking action. So whatever that client wants that action to be, whether they're going to get their email address, buying a book, booking them to speak, but they have some kind of call to action that they're doing that. So, but the first part of any PR is to get the attention. And that's the part that really is the strategy part of, like, how do you get the attention? Where do you have to go? So for my clients, it's like, are they getting that action? Meaning, are they getting booked to speak or are they selling their books?
Agreed, because definitely your business goals are first. Your comms goals support your business goals, right?
Yeah.
Then you have your comms strategy and tactics. It's not just media relations. There's so much more than just media when it comes to PR. About leadership, executive visibility, stakeholder engagement, then media relations, events. Those are all different ways to be able to elevate yourself. And when you go to your KPIs, it is talking about how many articles did we get, or how many social media followers did we grow? How many speaking opportunities were there? What was the sentiment and the impression? And then, of course, always we want to be able to measure sales. Nothing in PR is ever guaranteed. If someone says, I can guarantee you're going to sell so many books, they are not a true PR person. What you're doing is trying to create influence, not sales.
So do you think that a major KPI would be impressions around a certain piece of content or share of voice? What are your thoughts
yes,
there?
If your goal is brand awareness. If your goal is brand awareness, then you want to go with big impressions. But maybe it's not always about having a Kim Kardashian or someone being your spokesperson or being your big influencer, because that's brand awareness. She has all the followers, but is there engagement? Right now, the big sweet spot is called nano influencers. They might have 25,000 influencers or followers, but they're talking about something very niche and specific, and there's tons of engagement. They might be talking about something as simple as candles, right? He's the candle guy on social media, or he's on whatever. He's writing about it, but everyone follows him. They all engage, and that drives more sales than overall. If some big outlet, I won't say anyone, talks about your candle, it might be that nano influencer versus that big outlet.
Got it. So the KPI should factor in the influence of the nano influencer, or the amount of conversions that come from that particular source. You also have your overall goals that you're looking to reach to make sure that is PR moving the needle with the overall goals that we're trying to reach, such as events, conversions, selling books, speaking engagements, and so on. And so I guess one way to track that is if, you have an opportunity that's presented, you simply ask, well, how did you find me? Right? Or where did you hear about me? And then that also is something to note and could be attributed to the success or the conversion you're looking for. I think all that's great. All that is great. So I want to pivot to a section in our podcast where we call the bad, the bold, and the brilliant. Okay, so this is where you can give your opinion about a PR campaign and essentially label that PR campaign bad, bold, or brilliant. You got it? All right, so for the first example is from Canva, and how Canva use organic PR campaigns through content marketing. So if you don't know what Canva is, you're probably underneath the rock, but get out from underneath the rock. Canva is a design platform that has been making headlines with their cost-effective content marketing strategies that also double as PR campaigns. They essentially manage to secure significant media attention without splurging on big PR budgets, simply by creating valuable, shareable content such as design tutorials, free resources, trend reports, and so on. So is this campaign bad, bold, or brilliant? What are your thoughts?
I think it's smart to leverage your
Canva
users.
is like the winner. Like the woman
I
is
don't
like a
use
billionaire.
Canva, but I know the people that use it love it. So I use Adobe Express, or I don't use Canva. But I know people do love Canva, except it's been redesigned and people don't like that. That's what I've been seeing and hearing on social. So I don't know.
I mean,
Campaign-wise, they're brilliant.
We're kind of digital marketing, because what you're talking about is content marketing, digital marketing is different from PR, which is like media relations and earned media. So I guess it could, but it's different. It moves the needle for her KPIs. Overall, it's still marketing. It's under the marketing umbrella. One of the things I will tell people that PR is not your sales tool. So PR is not your sales tool. So you're going to have marketing, and then PR is a part of it. Just like speaking could be a part of marketing if you're speaking, but it's not one. PR will not sell for you. I always tell people, it says, well, I want to get on this television show because I want to sell my event. I said, boo, they're not trying to sell your event on their show. You need to go to the advertising department and run a commercial. But if you want a story, they don't have to run a story about you a month before your event because you want to sell so many tickets. that's an ad. So I always tell people, I say, realize that PR and publicists, when you come to a publicist and you're so like, oh my God, I need to sell tickets to my event, or I need to sell so many books. That's the ad department. That is not what PR is for. PR is for credibility, visibility, awareness, brand. It's not sales. Advertising is for sales.
And I'll add this part too. The entire PR world and digital marketing and all that has kind of come to this weird mashup. We call it an omni-channel approach. So it's not just this one thing that we should do. It's a holistic approach. So say we're going to promote Jonte, right? So it's more than just getting you on TV. It's more than just your influencer campaign. It's more than your paid advertisement. It can also be a whisper campaign. So who's whispering in the back? Who's talking about you? There are multiple ways to tell your story, and you're going to find your audience in multiple places. One big thing I do is called polycultural consulting. Polycultural means I'm not just one thing. I'm not just a Black woman. I'm reading Essence. No, I'm a Black woman who has a daughter who wrestles and cheers. I love to go to Martha's Vineyard, and I also like to sew. You're going to find me in different places. People don't realize that when it comes to magazines like TechCrunch, Entrepreneur, 30% of their readership is Black, because Black people are also entrepreneurs. So you have to realize there are many different ways to tell a story and many different places to find your audience.
I love that. And what I think too, with going back to the Canva example, is they created things that people ultimately would talk about, right? These free resources that people would talk about, and that can possibly get them more earned media, right? So definitely thank you for those tips. I got two more that I want you guys to go through and give me your opinion if they're bad, bold, or brilliant. All right, so next up we have Glossier. They leverage user-generated content. So although Glossier is not a startup, it's the beauty brand strategies are still highly relevant. They use user-generated content to gain media attention. They recently launched a campaign encouraging users to share their Glossier routines on social media. And the buzz generated by users in turn caught the attention of beauty editors and influencers, of course, leading to extensive media coverage. So is this campaign bad, bold, or brilliant?
Brilliant. I mean, they probably use Instagram. That's where they hang out.
Yeah, that's where they hang out. Yeah, I would agree. That is brilliant. Next we have.
I will say this: if you're on Instagram or you're just getting on Instagram and you don't use it and you're trying to get in it, I see so many people. It's kind of like that train has left the station, because it is a whole new ecosystem of beauty influence. I mean, I see people struggle so hard trying to get seen or noticed or heard on Instagram, and they are like not in that space. Go where your audience is. That's, just because everybody else, or you think everybody else is on Instagram. If Instagram is not working for you, leave it and go find somewhere else. Go to Threads or go to LinkedIn or something, but try to compete against something like, a beauty brand
I'll add this part too. Journalists are watching the trends on Instagram. They're watching the trends on Twitter. They're finding their stories there. That's why these Canva and Glossier, they're brilliant, because they leverage authentic conversations, their content and their work that was being shared, or their influencer campaign. And then the journalists saw this is trending. That then became earned media.
All right. And what about Clubhouse? They had a real-time engagement focus on real-time engagement on social media. If we're still, I don't know, people still using Clubhouse now?
I was loving Clubhouse during the pandemic.
They came in hot.
I was on Clubhouse. I had an iPhone. I was on there first. I was sending out invites. People were so happy about getting an invite on Clubhouse. That was brilliant at the beginning, how they got people to get on Clubhouse. Because that'd be invite only, right?
Absolutely. And if people don't know about Clubhouse, it is an audio-based social media platform that has essentially utilized real-time engagement to boost their PR. And so they regularly host live discussions with thought leaders, which are covered by tech news outlets. And by creating buzz through live events, they've managed to stay in the media spotlight without traditional PR budget. So what do you guys think? Is this campaign bad, bold, or brilliant?
It was bold, and it was excellent. It had a moment in time, the pandemic for sure. And also people want what they can't have. So it was very exclusive, one of those, if you know, you know. The pivot they took about kind of opening up That's what messed them up. It became not exclusive anymore, so no longer authentic. It went a different direction. So it was bold, and good luck to them.
Yeah.
All right.
I really hate that too, because I think the person who was at their marketing is a Black woman, young Black woman, and I was really trying to support it, but it became irrelevant at a certain point in time. Like you said, Shenikwa,
Unfortunately.
Yeah, because Twitter has the audio rooms, I believe, and audio spaces, I believe, and LinkedIn also has audio as
LinkedIn
well,
has like
right?
a Clubhouse. Exactly.
Yeah, their own audio space. All right, so now we're going to talk about tools you can't live without. All right, so I want each one of you to share a tool, a tactic, an app that you cannot live without, and how you apply it
Oh my God.
your personal or professional life.
Now this just happened. I'm gonna say it before they say it. Chat GPT.
Good thing. 2 out of 10.
Say it before they say it, because it was like, oh my God, where were you 20 years ago? Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, I don't use it at all. So
It would change your life.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
No, I like
your brain don't have to work that
Perplexity.
hard.
Well, see, I love writing. I have a journalism
It's
degree.
not even
so that's kind of
writing, Michelle. It's
my
not
first
even
thing.
writing. It's
Well,
Girl,
I
we
just
gotta
hope
talk
it's
offline.
I sign a lot of NDAs for clients, and so that could get me in legal trouble if I was feeding information from clients into the chatbot. But anyway, Perplexity is an AI-based search platform that I have used. I like that one. The tool that I wrote down to mention that I really like for clients is Coverage Book, because it creates a beautiful report that you can present, and it also has some metrics in there, and they just seem to love it. It's pretty cost-effective. You can kind of go month to month with it. You don't need to commit to a giant, year-long expensive contract. So those are a couple.
That's good.
I think Chat GPT for sure, while also knowing it can start you out, it's a starter, but it cannot be your finished product. It's just a tool to put words on paper, and then you still have to play with it and put yourself into it. You're the expert. They are not the expert. They just kind of maybe get you started or show you things you didn't see. I think Canva is all the things and all the rage. It just makes you an instant graphic designer and just inspires you. I love that. But my secret sauce that's so old school and easy, Google Alert.
Oh,
Period. Yeah, just, if I'm looking for something to happen in the news, it pops up. At least I'm there in the real time and being able to make sure I'm monitoring.
Google Alerts is really good too if you're a speaker, because you can put in the phrase "call for speakers," and you get Google Alerts. How about that?
There it is. I love it.
It's a great idea. Awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate this conversation. I want to make sure that everyone knows more about you all, what you have coming up, and what you're working on. Pam, I know you may have some PR, branding services, books, online courses, things like that, but let us know how people can connect with you and what you have to offer.
Really simple, PamPerryPR.com. That domain came by accident because PamPerry.com was taken, so I had to do PamPerryPR.com, and that actually worked. So good thing it hasn't changed over the years. So PamPerryPR.com, and they can go there and actually get, I have a little video that I do, like the 7 things that the media looks for, so they can actually get that for free. If they're looking for quick media coverage, they can click that tab as well, and they can actually get quick media coverage where we actually put your story together and get it out to the outlet that matches your story.
Awesome. And so they can find that on your website?
Yep, PamPerryPR.com.
Awesome. And Michelle, I know you have a lot going on with your consultancy services, upcoming events, workshops, so on. Give us an idea of what you have coming up and where people can find you.
My book, b2bprbook.com. It is part of my website, but it has its own URL. This came out in April. It was a bestseller on Amazon and the PR list, so I was very proud of that. I am speaking at Content Marketing World, where I'll see you in just a few weeks in October in San Diego. And my website is michellegarrett.com, and there it's my blog and my newsletter you can subscribe to. It's free. So thank you. Yes.
Awesome. And Shenikwa, where can people find you? What do you have? What are you working on? Let us know.
I'm ubiquitous. I'm everywhere all the time. For what reason, we don't really know at this point, because I'm just so inspired. Yes, I love media relations, but I've gone heavily into stakeholder engagement, also events. People are finding different ways to tell their story. So I have a thing called The N, which is coming online, that I'm in partnership with Jonte on. So more to come with that. but also I want to uplift voices of social innovators. So find me at carculturecollective.com. That's our overall PR. The N is more like stakeholder events as well as influencer engagement. And of course, I'm still a fractional employee and vice president at Burst and PR. So probably hit me on LinkedIn, Shenikwa Carr.
Awesome. Well, listen, that was great. A great conversation with you all. I'm your host, Jonte Delane, founder of Digital Delane, a full-service digital marketing agency where we help bring new brands, campaigns, and ideas to life. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Brand Behavior. We hope you've gained valuable insights into leveraging PR for startups and how to get media attention without a big budget. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and visit our website, thebrandbehavior.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share it with your network. We'll see you next time.